Good afternoon. I am so glad to be here to get a chance to share with you all for a few minutes. And I've been asked to talk about leadership lessons. So thank you to the board and thank you to Karen, my friend there, all of my wonderful friends and colleagues that's partnering with us on this important life and leadership journey. Thank you for my dear friend, Commander Simpson. We're going to have a conversation. That's what we're going to have this afternoon. I do want to set it up for a few minutes, though, to set the stage for our talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership lessons just for a few minutes, and then we'll have a conversation. Where are the ROTC people again? I want to see their hands. Oh, it's a lot of y'all, because the first time it was only like 3 of y'all. Raise your hands high. All right, who's my Air Force people? All right, Air Force. All right, any Coast Guard people? No Coast Guard people. All right, what about Navy? Awesome. Any Marine Corps options? No Marine Corps. That's all right, because I'm the Marine in here today. All right. Awesome. Well, we have just some things to share with you all, and I hope it will really help all of you as you think about your life and leadership journey. So, I want to talk about the path and the process and the challenge of leadership. And in doing that, I'm going to share a little about this young man whose name was Joshua. And Joshua is a biblical character, but before we talk about Joshua, we want to talk about his mentor, who was Moses. And Moses is an important person in both Judaism and Christianity. And for those who came to the talk last night, I talked a lot about the wilderness. And Moses had about 40 years before he received what was his leadership assignment and actually kind of coming to the end of his life. And throughout those 40 years, he was spending it preparing a people to accomplish a mission, and Joshua, who was about your age, was his aide. He was his mentee. So I want to remind some of you, if you are a reader of the Bible, and then inform others that Joshua accepted his first opportunity to lead by accepting the challenge to become a war fighter. So he was fighting a war against this group called the Amalekites. And we don't know for sure if Joshua had any war fighting abilities, but this is the point that Joshua learned how to fight by being in the battle, right? This is what we call in the military on-the-job training, right? Like you actually have to do something. And so that's what Joshua did. Moses said, hey, I need you to pick some men to go to war. And Joshua said, yeah, okay, I'll go do that. And part of the reason they were able to win that battle was because there was an intergenerational group of people that all accepted their individual responsibilities to work together towards a common task, and they won the battle. That's the first time that Joshua is introduced to us in the text. Later on, we see Joshua pop up here and there from following Moses. And what we learned is that Joshua was a teachable student, that Joshua proved himself trustworthy, that when Moses wasn't around, Joshua was still at work. Eventually, he becomes Moses' successor. And he's actually the one that leads the people into the promised land that God told them would eventually come. I get the opportunity to mentor, to teach, to train young people all across the country, really. And I also get to teach and train the teachers and mentors that coach you, right? And I can tell you that a lot of us are having some similar conversations. This is what's good about our younger generations. I'm talking about the millennials, Gen Z. This is what's good. Generally, you all want to lead. That's a good, healthy desire. I celebrate that. I celebrate that. But this is the thing I also want us to learn as we think about Joshua's journey and what we can learn from that, is that having the desire to lead is not enough. What we need is young people who are humble and responsible and consistent and patient enough to become followers first. So Commander Simpson and I met at the United States Naval Academy. She graduated the year before I did, and so she was one of the people that I looked up to. I'm like, I want to be like, she was smarter than me too. Let me just say that, right? But you know, she was out leading and doing stuff, and there were a lot of women like her that I looked up to, and I'm like, I believed that I could do the things because she was doing the things, and so she was one of the people that I followed. And so we learned at the Naval Academy, because when they're teaching us about leadership, they're also teaching us about mentorship. Not just mentoring other people, but being willing to be mentored by other people. And in doing that, we learned that before you can lead well, you must first learn how to follow well. That is a part of the process and journey of leadership. There's a scripture in the Bible that says that we should not despise humble beginnings, because God rejoices in the beginning of a work. Patience and commitment to the process of leadership development is what equips us to become servant leaders of character. Too often, we're focused on the destination, where we want to be, where we want to go, what we want to do, while ignoring the process and the lessons that we can learn along the way on our life and leadership journey. So I'm giving you a little insight into this biblical story, because as I've studied Joshua's leadership journey, one thing that really stood out to me this last time, I read this story a lot. You're going to be the first one to hear about my next book project, so I'm giving you a little bit of insight there. But this last time I was reviewing Joshua's story, one of the things we learned is that Moses would be the only one that would speak to God. The Bible says that God spoke to Moses as if he was a friend. So Moses would go up to the top of this mountain, Mount Sinai, and God would speak to him. And then what Moses would do, he would go down to the mountain and tell the people what God said. And when Moses went down to the mountain to tell the people what God said, Joshua stayed at the tent of meeting. And the tent of meeting was where God really was speaking to Moses. And what I noticed as a military person, commander, is that Joshua was standing watch. That's what he was doing. All alone in the hot desert when no one was looking or singing his praises. When Commander Simpson and I first joined the military, we had to memorize these military ranks and rates and insignia. And one of the ones we had to memorize was the general orders of the century, the 11 general orders of the century. Have you memorized this, ROTC people? Have y'all been introduced to this, the general orders of the century? Yes? No, I need you to talk back. I'm a black woman from a black church. Like, yes? Yes, you have. Yes, what's your name? What? Nick. So Nick, you've heard of the 11 general orders of the century? You've heard of them. Okay, so we had to memorize these things, right? It's been a long time. But it was about watch standing. And so let me tell you some of the general orders. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are a few of them. To watch my post in a military manner, always keeping on the alert, observing everything that takes place within sight or hearing. To report all violation of orders I'm instructed to enforce. To quit my post only when properly relieved. To talk to no one except for in the line of duty. To give alarm in case of fire of disorder. To be especially watchful at night and during the times of challenging. To challenge all persons on or near my post and to allow no one to pass without proper authority. Pay attention to these words. Military manner, always on the alert, observing everything that you can see or hear, reporting all violations that you are instructed to enforce. Only relieving your post when you have been properly relieved by someone else who's coming to stand watch. To talk to no one who's not on watch with you. To give the alarm if there's any danger. Be especially watchful at night and when you're being challenged. Keeping watch ladies and gentlemen, is serious business. It requires discipline, showing up on time, showing up every time, staying the entire time, reinforcing orders, maintaining standards. It is not a time for playing or socializing. There are tasks to complete, rounds to make to ensure that the facility is safe and secure, that all people are doing their job, that the products are in their proper location, that everyone's doing their assigned work, that there are messes to fix, there are issues to report, there are logs to keep. Standing watch requires integrity. And most of the time, you can't sleep while you're on watch. Certainly not if you're the only one standing watch. A watchstander must always be vigilant, even at 3 o'clock in the morning. Standing watch is a test of one's character. So I want you to pay attention, because one of the things I want you to take away today is that we must all learn how to discipline ourselves for leadership. And that begins with your own self-leadership. See, too many young people want to lead everything, but haven't proven that they can consistently complete small tasks with integrity. Want to get paid a certain amount of money, but won't volunteer, won't show up consistently, won't do a good job just because the job needs to be done. So why would someone entrust you with a sacred responsibility of leadership when you haven't proven yourself trustworthy over basic responsibilities? Standing watch was also a test of Joshua's resolve. Because Moses, when given Joshua what seemed like a thankless task, but it was also a very important one, he was mentoring Joshua. He was training him. Moses could observe in the test whether things would be orderly when he came back up to the mountain, whether things would be decent and in order, as we like to say, whether Joshua was asleep. The Bible says that those who prove themselves faithful over a few things will have their leadership expanded. So Joshua goes on to become a great leader. But his leadership was built on the training grounds of his mentorship from Moses. Humbly submitting to Moses' leadership, proving himself trustworthy and faithful in his current assignments. That is the basis of him becoming a leader of character. And so these are my 3 points as we begin this conversation. I want you to trust the process and preparation of leadership. Not just focusing on the destination of where you want to lead and where you want to go. I want you to be patient and be willing to be mentored by other great leaders. And here's the thing, you can be mentored by bad leaders too, because they will let you know what you don't want to do. It's a real thing. And then I want you to consistently show up to do the work that needs to be done. That's the foundation of becoming a great leader. And then I'm going to have a conversation with Commander Simpson about this, what this looks like in real life. All right, let me have a seat. You ready, ma'am? Awesome, let's do it. So I got a few questions already from Miss Karen. So we'll answer those, and then we're just going to invite you to stand up if you have any questions. We'll be glad to answer. We'll repeat your questions into the mic. Introduce yourself, ask the question, we'll repeat it into the mic, and then we'll answer until the time runs out. And so you can keep me honest. Okay, good. All right. So one of the questions that I was asked, welcome, by the way.
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you. Was a question about, you know, when you are leading in a very competitive environment, and you are a whole human, right? So there's other things you're doing outside of work.
Absolutely.
Like, how do you maintain a work-life balance?
So yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, where work-life balance is something that you have to make sure that everything fits within the confines of your life. So obviously you have to work to make a living, but I don't really think there's a balance there. You're just making everything fit within your life. You do the things that work for you, and then that's how you achieve your balance. And if that means saying no to certain things because it interferes with your family life or some other things that you have going on, volunteer when you can, serve when you can, and when you can't, be honest about your limitations. And that's how I've been able to achieve work-life balance, or some semblance of it. And sometimes it's okay to step back a little bit and say, I've got enough on my plate right now. So, no, thank you.
So you've been married to the same person for how many years?
Oh man, it's been 9 years.
And what does he do for a living?
He's actually a computer scientist and works for the government.
Okay.
So he has his own job. We have two small kids. We have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So we have a very busy home life.
So I've been married to the same guy for 17 years. We have a 14-year-old daughter. And so you are someone, how many years you have in the Navy?
Oh, 20, 21.
21. So she's already past retirement time. She's just giving us extra because she loves our country so much. And so you can thank her for that. Give her a round of applause. So I did 6 years in the Marine Corps. And so part of my getting out of the Marine Corps was just pretty much a family decision.
Totally get it.
So, I chose to get out. You chose to stay in. And both was the right choices for each of us. And I share that because as young people, I can tell you, so I was 24 when I got married. You were?
Oh, man. I started a little late, so I was like 35.
Okay, so I was 24, she was 35. And that's important because if you choose to get married, let's have this conversation. This free mentorship y'all getting. Okay. I'm going to help you out because I'm going to talk to y'all like I talk to my girls.
Emphasis on choice.
It is a choice because
Absolutely.
you don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. But if you choose to get married, I think it's very important that you choose a partner, right? And that the partner you choose, that you have like values about who you are individually as humans and professionally, your dreams and the desires for family. Like, and you are a family if you already married, but also like, do you want kids or do you not want kids, and how is that going to impact your things? And I think specifically as women, because I know it's a lot of women, I'm looking at some young women here, the challenge for being in a very demanding profession, it could be the military, but it could be something else, is that a lot of times when you're required to lean into those jobs is during your good childbearing years, right? That's just the reality. And I'm talking for someone who's been a professional in very demanding jobs for most of those early years, in predominantly male, predominantly white environments. And, those are really important conversations to have with a partner before you get into that space, because those are the kind of things that get you someplace where you don't want to be. You're divorced because you didn't have an important conversation. So conversations, because it's not just one conversation.
So it's really about defining what your partnership looks like.
Yeah.
As far as your career, your family life, and how you balance those two. And it really needs to be a truthful conversation. I think sometimes that's where people get in trouble. It's not an authentic conversation where they say, this is what I really want to do, and this is how I see my family and the rest of my life fitting into that.
And we need to reevaluate sometimes, because what you said, 17 years or 11 years ago was not maybe
not
5 years.
Yeah. And then like Natasha was saying, you make the right decision for you at the time. I stayed in for 20 years because I wasn't married. So I stayed in and I was enjoying my job. Then I met my husband, and then my priorities shifted a little bit once we had kids. And luckily for me, the kids came a little later, so I can do my whole service and then I can retire and my kids will still be plenty young. But I think if I would have had a family a little bit earlier, I might have made a different decision.
That's honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so the last question I have here, and then we'll open the floor, is how do you fulfill leadership roles while maintaining meaningful relationships with friends and family?
You've got to put a lot of work and effort into it. It's very important as a leader and as a person who's responsible for a lot of things. I think sometimes we neglect self-care.
We were just talking about that.
Yes, we were literally just
At
talking about
lunch.
this like 5 minutes ago. But like meeting with your friends and your family and having those conversations, it really helps to like rejuvenate you and reset you and re-energize you. And it's so important. You can't go to work and pour into the people that you work with and that work for you if your cup is empty. So you know you have to push into those types of engagements and those meetings with the friends and the girl weekends and you know the guys night outs. You have to do it. It's important to make sure that you're whole to provide proper leadership for everyone that you're leading.
Yeah, and because we were like 20 years of
Absolutely.
friendship, and and that's ebb and flow because you be out doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's about like commanding
Yeah.
ships and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where um, making that choice about who you want to journey through life with and leaning into those relationships are very important. I remember when I was at the basic school. So this is the officer boot camp for the Marine Corps. So 6 months training, and there was a general that spoke to us there. I'll never forget. And so he had, done a career in the military, and his son was in my class. And so he spoke to us, and he said, one day the military is going to divorce you.
Yep.
And in other words, it could be the end of your, retirement, but it can also be a layoff. Right? It could be a firing. It could be COVID. At some point, like your work is not, well, to one extent, it's going to always be there.
Yes.
Right? And then it's not going to be there. And so I think we do live in a society because we're so performance based. And I'm a doer, so I like to do stuff. But what I'm saying is a lot of times that our identity gets wrapped up in what we do and not who we are. And so what I think about human to human connection, it reminds us about who we are being, and the relationships and the people in our lives are important. And if people say, well, how you have friends for all these years? I'm like, well, the way to have a good friend is to be one.
Yeah.
That's it. Right? And you have to set healthy boundaries around that and all those things. But people, I think at the foundation and core of things, they want to be known and loved. And so if you present yourself in that way to people, then you will have people in your life that will do things like drive 3 hours to come have a conversation
Absolutely.
with college students that they don't know,
Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So that was the questions that I had. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Question. So leadership and the can be really exciting, right? The idea of it, doing it, but sometimes the preparation for it isn't really all that exciting. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that for you all. Have there been moments of failure that have been defining moments for preparation, or boredom, or sort of, I feel like you get out of college and think, woo!
So the question was like, leadership sounds exciting, but what about the points of failure or boredom, and I guess how you navigate the kind of ups and downs of leadership? Yeah, to prepare you for that. Want to go?
Wow, I think the important part of that is just really looking at every experience as a step of preparation, like literally. Even in those bad moments and those moments of failure, failure is important. And I know we don't really like to talk about that, but it's a profound moment of growth if you allow it to be, and you kind of push past it and you learn the lesson from that failure, which is very important. I failed a couple of times, and I've still made it through here. I'll talk about nuclear power school for like a specific example. That was a very challenging time for me. I'm a chemistry major. I consider myself a pretty smart person, and I had to literally study like all the time, like literally 40 hours a week I was studying. I put myself on study hours so that I could pass the test and get the knowledge that I needed to pass the assessments. And even with all of that work, I still only came out with not a very high score. I never failed a test, but I think my average was like an 82. So some people would look at that and get frustrated and say, man, I did all this work and I only came out with an 82. I must be whatever, like not that smart or whatever, like negative stuff that you tell yourself. But I will tell you that it's not very helpful, right? So I got the certificate. I got the same certificate that everyone else got. And the lesson I learned in that is that, that type of information is a little bit harder for me to retain. So I just have to work a little bit harder. And that's okay. So it was a piece of information that I was armed with. And moving forward in my career, I always came back to that and said, okay, if I'm having trouble retaining something, then I go back to that time where I was struggling, and I remind myself, okay, my brain doesn't really like to do this, so I need to, break it down, make it simpler, throw some note cards or something like that. But learn from your failures is like one of the things that I would definitely say about leadership. It's very important and humbling too, right? Like, 'cause you want to know that your leader is like a person and has dealt with some challenges, so they can help other people with challenges as well.
Yeah, I think about the young people in my nonprofit. We took them to the Center of Creative Leadership, before COVID, BC, and it's a new timeline. Okay, so but I remember the lady who was coaching them. Then she's like, failure is feedback, and so like I don't even dwell on the failures, and I've had plenty, but I don't look at it as like, oh my gosh, woe is me. It's like it's the best I could do at the time. Like there's like, what you majoring in Naval Academy? Graduation. It's the best I could do.
Yes.
I am not, what I'm saying? Like, I
Yes.
wish I would have done better academically. It's like, it's the best I could do at the time. And guess what? Nobody asked me what my GPA is.
Ever.
They don't. And so I think it's one of those things, but I also think it's about the perspective, because you talk about points of boredom and stuff, and I think it goes back to my talk of like, there's some things you do as a leader just because it has to be done. We were just talking about parenting at lunch. There's some things you do just because it has to be done. Like, I don't like to go to the little things and taking the strawberries and having conversations and acting like I want to be there. Like, I don't want to be on the playground. Like, I have other important things to do, and this is not it. I'm only here because I love the kid. That's it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think at work it's the same way. Like, I'm in a nonprofit. Like, I'm doing all kind of stuff I don't want to do because I care about the work and the people that's being impacted by the work. And this is about what it means to be a selfless leader.
Absolutely.
Like, there are things that you have to do just because they have to be done.
Yeah. In those moments of boredom, I can think back to when I was stationed at the Pentagon, and it wasn't a very demanding job, and I took that time to do some things to like better.
How about challenge yourself?
Yes, challenge myself.
Try that.
Better myself. That's where I finished my my master's degree. And so, you use that time and you figure out like, okay, what are the things that I need to work on in myself to make me a better leader, parent, whatever it is, whatever your goals are, and you just kind of lean in to that stuff as well.
And I'm like really big on mentorship, right? So if you are ever bored, find you other humans to invest in. No, seriously. And not to make people projects, but like just to see them, like call out some goodness in them, challenge them in a new way. Like, that's important work, and it takes an investment of your time. That's it. That's it. Questions? Young people, y'all got us sitting in the cold. I need y'all to ask some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jen. I was wondering about whether or not you guys felt called to the military. How did you make that decision?
Good question. So she was asking whether we felt called to the military and how do we make that decision in our lives. I'll answer, but you go first.
Oh man. So my mom was in the Navy. She was enlisted. She retired as a chief. So that's pretty much what I saw her doing most of my life. And then there was a time where, I graduated from high school and I wanted to go to college. I didn't have any money. My mom didn't have any money. So that's how I ended up going to the Naval Academy and entertaining the idea of going into the military. I don't know if you know this, Natasha, but I actually enlisted in the Army first. and I took the
ASVAB.
ASVAB. I
Mhm.
took the ASVAB,
Mhm.
and I did well enough to be a dental technician.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
I actually started. I joined the delayed entry program. I was doing some drilling on the weekends, and I actually had orders after graduation to go
Mhm.
to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, to be a dental tech in the Army.
Mhm.
And then I received a letter from the Naval Academy, and
That trumps everything else.
I know. I was like, well,
Yeah.
let me try this Naval Academy thing. So I
Right.
went there.
No,
Literally.
seriously.
Like,
No, I understand.
yeah, I got
Yeah.
the letter. I went there, and the rest is history. But really, it was because of the need for funding to go to college,
Mhm.
and then later, I was just going to do my 5 years,
Yep.
and it turned into literally, I loved the people, and I liked working with the people,
Mhm.
and that's what kept me in so long. So sometimes it's not even like the job itself. It's literally the sailors that I work with and the other officers that I work with on a daily basis that, kind of kept me and drew me in.
Mhm. No, I mean it's similar in that, we both come from like small South Carolina,
Yeah.
like small towns in South Carolina, and so for me, here I am like a big fish in a small bowl, and from a small town in South Carolina. I did very well for myself, and so the Naval Academy actually recruited me to run track. I was like a stellar track athlete, and but they weren't the only ones, right? And so I remember I started racing competitively in middle school. Like in sixth grade, I was running Junior Olympics, and my parents said to me in sixth grade, it was like, Natasha, you're smart, and we think you can go to college. We don't have the money to pay for it. You have to figure that out. And I was like, okay. And so literally, I started making decisions in sixth grade.
grade.
I'm like, how I'm gonna get this money to pay for school? And that was my thing. And I was the oldest of 3 children. My parents, like my dad was a blue collar worker. He was a roofing contractor by trade. So we just didn't have a lot of money. He worked hard, all the time. We just didn't have a lot of resources. And it was really important to me as the oldest child to get myself off of my parents' books. That was very important. And so I come from a military family too. So the time my mother was in the Army. I don't think you knew that.
I didn't know that.
So, but I didn't know at first, but she was in the Army, and so she was a typist.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
women did then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were typing.
Yeah.
So so she spent a few years in the Army. Her dad was a World War II vet. Her brother had served a lot of years in the Army. And so I come from like a patriotic family, but my ignorance as a high school student was, well, I didn't know the difference between being enlisted and being an officer personnel. Shout out to the enlisted personnel, because y'all help us get stuff done, and we just don't know what we be doing half the time we come in. Thank you so much. So I'm telling you, the staff NCOs run the military. So that being said, and the chiefs.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Right. So, but it's like one of those things where, when I understood the assignment, y'all like that. My daughter be trying to coach me. Like, I understood the assignment, right? Yes. So I understood the assignment, and I started working towards that assignment, right? And so when I was doing that work, the coach for Navy started reaching out to me in my junior year to recruit me, and I didn't understand the difference between being enlisted and officer. Only thing I understood, and this is ignorance on my part, they being the recruiters, were coming to the high school at lunch recruiting people to enlist, and they were not recruiting people that were on the honor roll. So here it is. They saying you can be a dental tech, which is good. Like, we need that,
Yeah.
but you also run the doggone ship. You understand?
Yeah.
And so all the kids in my high school, I have like 98% black kids. And so all those kids, they're recruiting not on the honor roll. So I'm like, I'm not going to the military. And so they were recruiting me for a year. I just kept throwing the paper in the trash. I mean, literally for a year. I'm like, I'm not doing the military thing. But the lady was smart, and she kept wooing my mother. Because I wasn't living with my parents at the time, and so she was wooing my mother, and I didn't know this. And so I got to my senior year of high school, and I was applying to all these colleges, and scholarship money was rolling in. It really was. But my guidance counselor, a teacher I trusted, and my mother, they've all said, apply to the Naval Academy, keep your options open. And something happened between my turning in that paperwork and me getting the end of my senior year saying, you know what, this is going to be a good place to be from.
Yes.
I learned later.
Yes.
Not to be. It's not a good place to
Not
be.
to be.
It's
To
a
be
good place to
from.
be from.
Be from.
So it was a practical thing of, yes, I come from a patriotic family, but they're going to give me a great education. They're going to pay me to go. It's going to be a free education. And they're going to guarantee me a career, because at the time, we're talking the late 1900s, as my daughter would say, right?
Oh, gosh.
No, that's how she talks about it. I I knew a lot of college graduates that weren't working.
Yes.
And I'm like, what's the point? And so it was a practical decision for me. And to your point, then you get in and you have fun and all your friends doing it, and then you get to work and play with people that you enjoy being around. Yeah.
Natasha?
Yes, ma'am.
Could Lanija ask the last question?
Yes.
Oh, Lanija? Yes. Hi, I'm Lanija.
Hi.
Have you had any experiences that has made you reconsider your standing as a leader?
She said, have you had any decisions that made you reconsider your standing as a leader? Lanija, it is. So I'm gonna do a very, I'm gonna do this one because I'm gonna start on this one because that is a gendered question, right? I'm just gonna say it because I don't think a man would ever ask that question, right? And this is no slight to you. I think it's just a way we've been socialized. Like I'm constantly trying to convince women that they can lead. And so for me, I always knew I was a leader. Like from the time I'm the oldest of 3 children. There's a whole bunch of women in my family. I was always the one. When you playing you're playing doctors, I'm the doctor. You're playing school, I'm the teacher, right? Like that's just how I was in middle school. And I learned in middle school. I campaigned to become student body president in middle school, and so I was voted as a leader in middle school by my peers. And so I knew that I was a leader. It wasn't until I started doing other things and going into spaces where that wasn't affirmed, where it's like, oh, people don't know this? So to me, it was just very natural to always lead. So to answer that question, like, did I ever think about not doing it? It's just a part of who I am, right? And so I think a lot of what we face sometimes in society as women, certainly as women of color, is that it's not ours to do. Right? Leading is not ours to do. And so then I have to come out and then convince all the women in the room that you're already leading in some capacity. Like you're already influencing in some capacity. People are already watching and looking to you for good or bad. So it's not a question of whether or not you're going to lead. It's whether or not you're going to be a good leader or not.
Wow, that was perfect. I have nothing to add to that.
Well, our time is coming to a close.
Yes.
I'm going to stand here so you can hear me. But I know Datisa really wants to ask a question, so let's give it to Datisa.
Hey,
I can't
Datisa.
say no.
I would like something I've heard through you speaking, and I would like you to speak Christian.
Yeah.
Speak about your faith and ordered steps from where you were to where you are now.
So she asked about us sharing as a Christian about our steps being ordered. I'll just say about the journey. How do we get to where we are now? You go ahead and you want to do it first?
Oh, wow. Okay, so faith. My faith walk got really deep as a leader while I was, real authentic conversation here, when I was working for a toxic leader. It was a mental draw every day. It was emotionally draining, and I really had a hard time with it. And our brains are computers, and if you hear the same message enough times, some of it kind of gets to your brain. You might start to believe it. So toxic leader, and it was literally starting to affect my health, my mental state, my emotions. So I had to tap in really deep to who he says I am. Who he says I am. And in that moment, I didn't care what that leader said. I would have to literally tap into it. I had note cards, and when I would get upset and frustrated, I would take my little note cards. I would go into the bathroom, and I would say, and that's when I learned how to meditate on the word. And I still do it now sometimes in situations where I'm frustrated, or I need to just calm down a little bit, or just refocus on who I am. That's what I do, and that has gotten me through. It keeps me calm in situations where everyone else's hair is on fire. I'm just sitting there like, okay, I know this is going to be okay because I know whose I am, and it's going to be okay. So that worked for me. It's a point that I revisit all the time, and it has strengthened me. It has protected me, and when I look back over my career, I see places where, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I have gotten here, but I know that it was not me, but He who is in me.
Yeah, I think I'll keep it shorter. To me, I just had like a desperate prayer. I grew up in a Christian home, but I wasn't really like following Jesus for real, because like in high school, you having fun, right? And so like I feel like I knew enough about Jesus to not say stupid stuff out of my mouth, but I wasn't really like following Jesus in high school. But when I got on the plane to go, so I went to the preparatory school for the Naval Academy for a year before I went to the academy. And when I got on the plane, I just prayed to God. I'm like, God, you know, it was a selfish prayer, but it was an honest prayer, because I'm like, I'm going out into this big world. I was very tiny, like very, we were talking about this, like I was so small when I left home. You know, I'm like a black woman, small, going out to this big world by myself. And so I had a very protective father. Like, I'm like, my daddy's not going, and my mother was like an advocate, like she not going. And so like if daddy not going and mama not going, like Jesus gotta go. You know what I'm saying? And that was a prayer. And I'm like, God, if you do all the things and be all the things that you said that I heard about, then I will follow you. And so I haven't been perfect in that, but it was a commitment, you know, on the airplane going up to Newport, Rhode Island, you know, for that. And so for me, it's just kind of been that constant saying yes, putting one foot in front of the other, and watching God move. You know, one thing I pray about pretty frequently is, God, open doors for me that no one can shut, and close the doors you don't want me to walk through. And that has taken me in jobs and spaces and rooms and outer rooms. It's like, so if something doesn't work out, it is not a failure. It's like, that wasn't for me.
We weren't. Thank you so much. She knows how to do a mic. This woman, she can do all of it. Well, I want to remind you that Richard is here with Natasha's book, her Mentor for Life book, her Sojourner's Truth book for purchase. She'll sign them. I think that Commander Simpson and Ms. Robinson have agreed to stay around for a couple of minutes, because I can feel like they're just getting started. But for now, we just thank you so much for your wisdom, your words, and for your presence, for your example, for your lives. For all that you are and all that you brought to us today. So we here at Theological Horizons always end with a blessing. May the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you.